Hello and welcome to Bacan, an English language podcast about my Spanish language adventure in Chile. My name is India and I'm a third-year college student. This spring, I'm taking a semester off from the grind of the American higher education system to study abroad. From late February to early July, I will be in Valparaiso, a Chilean port city just north of Santiago on the coast. I was fortunate enough to receive a fellowship from my college so that I could afford to make this dream a reality. This first episode I'm recording in Memphis, in the basement of my school's library. Not sure if I'm really supposed to be here right now, so sorry, campus safety. When I'm in Chile, I don't know what my recording studio is going to look like. I don't know where I'm living or which classes I'm for sure enrolled in. There are a lot of unknowns about the next 6 months of my life. But one thing's for sure, once I'm there, I'll be doing some extremely personal research that will take me up and down the skinny, ribbon-like country, but more on that later. I felt stuck when I started thinking about how I was going to introduce myself, not only here to you, but also to people in Chile, other international students, new Chilean friends, my host family, my professors. In Texas and Tennessee, I feel extremely confident expressing myself. I'm actually kind of an oversharer, constantly needing to bounce ideas off of others, my identity dependent often to a fault on how others perceive me. The reality of going abroad forced me to rethink how I was going to communicate, verbally or otherwise, and that's pretty daunting. How am I going to express my basic needs, let alone my deepest thoughts and feelings, to the new people that I'll be interacting with? So I kept thinking about a friend of mine I met this time last year, a Lithuanian international student named Imantas.
So first of all, my name is Eimantas Norkevičius, and I'm from Lithuania, but now currently I'm studying in Scotland, full-time student. I'm doing neuroscience with psychology degree. So I've been to 4 different higher education institutions.
We both went on a school-sponsored ski trip to North Carolina at the beginning of the last spring semester and bonded in front of the big fireplace at the lodge. He was 30 and studying psychology at our college, and he made me laugh when he tried to pluck his rapidly melting ski boots from the lodge fire. In the process, he attracted the special attention of a lodge employee.
I can absolutely tell this story, but I'm not proud of this story, but my boots were totally soaked. They were, very wet. So I put them very close to the fireplace to get them dry. And I think it started, the plastic parts of these boots started to melt. and that caused, horrible smell. He picked up these boots and he started to shout, "Oh, whose are these boots?" He started to shout that we shouldn't leave, no one should leave them because it's health and safety. And I should have responded to him and I should have replied that these are mine. But I don't know, I just didn't want to.
A couple months later, we found ourselves in front of another fireplace, back on campus. We tried to keep a casual conversation going, but a lot of what we were saying was kind of lost in translation. He tried to explain to me this critical shift he'd experienced as a result of moving to the United States for a semester. He told me that people just did not understand him here.
It seems that sometimes I, lose attention of my, of the people who are listening to me. And, it frustrates me because it seems that people are getting bored. There's this thought that comes into my mind that, I might be boring to them or, not as maybe, interesting person to listen to. But the problem is that this disruptive thought that comes is really damaging. And I was thinking, am I same as a person? Is my ability to express myself fully, hindering or covering some, personality aspects? And I think it does. Sometimes it really does.
Parts of his personality that he thought were vital to who he was as a human being could not be expressed in English. Back in Lithuania, he said, he was really funny. In America, he didn't understand the jokes and couldn't make them himself.
I have to admit, I love being funny. I love, like making people laugh. And sometimes it doesn't work. You have your internal, like American, like your cultural jokes. And it's difficult to grasp. We have our own. And when I try to translate them, like by my own, I mean Lithuanian, for example. And when I speak to my Lithuanian friend, we can refer to our past or some kind of, I don't know, situation in my country or comedian.
Now he lives in Aberdeen, Scotland, and is constantly making an effort to both expand his worldview and retain his first language, the one he loves, Lithuanian.
But I'm proud of my language. I'm very happy we have it because it definitely distinguishes us as a culture, as a nation, and it helps us to kind of stay together. I can immediately recognize if someone from Lithuania is calling me, because Lithuanian version would be Eimantas. Eimantas.
Eimantas.
Yeah, correct, exactly.
Okay.
So it's really tough for, English speakers.
As a person who values her ability to connect and socialize with others, this upcoming semester is frightening. But I'm excited to see the way that my personality will be stripped down to the bare minimum, and I get to find out who or what I am underneath the schmaltz and the spiels. For now, though, here's a little bit about me. I'm 21. I study history and international studies. I love to read, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I am pretty particular.
I knew that my life was going to get a bit louder. But I don't think I was prepared for quite the level of loud sometimes.
That's Sara. We lived together last semester on campus in the same apartment, but in rooms right next to each other. We've been best friends since we met on the first day of our freshman year.
I wasn't expecting to hear, okay, at 8 in the morning or at 3 in the afternoon. So sometimes that was kind of fun. I mean, you're not the cleanest person, but you are unapologetic about it, which is why it doesn't bother me,
Are you worried about me studying abroad?
Mm-mm. No, not even a little.
Really?
Mm-mm. I'm not. I think out of most of my friends, you were one of the most self-assured people that I know, and you know what you like and you know what you don't, and you know what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And I think it's just so cool how we're just adaptable people.
Yeah.
We're able to, and everybody is that way, humans have to be that way.
Do you think I'm going to be able to maintain my rituals?
No.
No.
Mm-mm. I think you will create ritual. I think you will, because you're India. But I think you're going to be able to let loose a little bit. Just like you did this past year when you took up a second job, You had to let some of your rigorous nighttime routine go in order to do that job and finish all your work. So I think in the same way you'll find more time in your schedule to go do fun things.
I'm also mostly a vegetarian. My favorite song is This Must Be the Place by the Talking Heads, and I make a mean cappuccino at the Elvis-themed wedding venue turned coffee shop where I work. No tattoos, yet. Single, 5 feet, 2 inches. This is me. This podcast is kind of about me, admittedly. You will hear my voice as I travel in South America, and you'll learn alongside me as I find out what it means to be a student, an American, a woman abroad. I want Bacan to be a little box where I get to stow away all the treasure I'll find in Chile, an audio memory book of this unique time in my life. But this podcast is also not really about me. It's about Chile, and even more so, it's about one Chilean in particular, the famous poet-politician hybrid Pablo Neruda. It's about his relationships with the women in his life and his relationship with his home country. In his book of questions, he wrote, "Is there anything sillier in life than to be named Pablo Neruda?" Born in 1904 as Ricardo Basoalto, the poet started out as a journalist and literary magazine writer, studying French and pedagogy at the University of Chile. Pablo's self-renaming was an attempt to hide his writing from his father, a railway worker who remarried and moved the family from Parral to Temuco following the death of his wife, Pablo's mother, Rosa Basoalto. The pseudonym comes from Czech poet, journalist Jan Neruda. In his book of short stories called Prague Tales, Jan writes with the same sea-loving wistfulness as Pablo, the same land-linked love of country. "Moving does have its poetry," he said. "I'll allow that. When an old dwelling starts to look desolate, a mixture of regret and anxiety comes over us, and we feel like we are leaving a safe harbor for the rolling sea." But by 1946, Pablo legally adopted the name Neruda and had returned to Chile following 2 decades of civil service as a diplomat for Chilean governments, under a series of presidents, ranging from the dictatorial to the socialist. Later that year, under the direction of the United States, new president, Gabriel González Videla, instituted the Ley Maldita, or accursed law, which tossed Pablo and other members of the Communist Party into exile. Many ordinary socialists were tossed into camps. My hope is to devote an entire upcoming episode to these governments and their intricacies, but for now, I want to focus on what was happening to Pablo while he was outside of Chile, and talk about some of his most famous writings, just to set us up for this journey. Pablo traveled and served as consul in a variety of locales. He began 1927 in Burma, then later went on to Ceylon, and then Java, and then Argentina, and finally Barcelona and Madrid. His appointments in Spain coincided directly with the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War, and his fierce support of the Spanish Republic caused him to both lose his consulship and mature his communist sentiment, which would become a major part of his life and work. I have to admit, I am super jealous of his resume. It's interesting how he acted as a voice for the marginalized and underrepresented poor, yet many of his writings were crafted exclusively while he was outside of Chile. He was drawing from his childhood, from his relationships, from the bit of news he could gather across far distances. There's a great film called Neruda, written by the well-respected Academy Award-nominated Chilean filmmaker Pablo Larraín, which is a fictionalized account of the poet's exile. It tackles the domestic witch hunt Pablo faced after Videla turned his back on the Communist Party. In it, Garcia Bernal's policeman calls the poet the King of Love. To the New York Times, Larraín said of Pablo, "He's in my bloodstream. His words describe my nation. Neruda in Chile is in the water, is in the earth, is in the trees. So when you approach him, it's hard and challenging and frightening. You realize that he's ungrabbable, that he will never be yours."
Y a la vez una creciente amenaza de frío, nieve, persecución. Todo se mezclaba. La soledad, el peligro, el silencio.
Pablo is a fascinating subject for the way in which he glorifies the collective. He was a poet of the people. His love poetry was sung at the parties of the wealthy around the country, and his political poems were shouted from the streets. In his 1971 Nobel lecture, which you just heard a bit from, he said, "In the midst of the arena of America's struggles, I saw that my human task was none other than to join the extensive forces of the organized masses of the people, to join with life and soul, with suffering and hope, because it is only from this great popular stream that the necessary changes can arise for the authors and for the nations. I was the most forlorn of poets, and my poetry was provincial, oppressed, and rainy. But always I had put my trust in man." Pablo has been rightfully criticized for his Stalinist sympathies in the early 40s and 50s, the topic of another episode to come. Following exile, he returned to Chile for a brief period before returning to his diplomatic duties. Many know the story of socialist President Allende and the coup d'etat in 1973, but it is less well known that Pablo was the first to be nominated for president before Allende. President Allende appointed him to be the Chilean ambassador to France, and then he won the Nobel Prize in 1971. Pablo passed away just 12 days after the Pinochet coup, during which Allende committed suicide. Conspiracy theorists and serious scientists alike suspect that the cause of death was poison, administered as he lay sick in a hospital bed. Chile fell into the hands of the CIA-backed dictator and remained under Pinochet's thumb until 1990. Okay, history class over. Now it's time for the fun stuff. The love affair that inspired Pablo to write my favorite book of all time, 100 Love Sonnets. In 1946, Pablo was living with his second wife, Delia, when he attended a concert in Forest Park, a plot of urban green space nestled within the capital, Santiago. There, he met Matilde Urrutia, the continent's first female pediatric therapist, a bright, red-headed woman 8 years his junior. Amidst the international drama of his exile, and while still in a relationship with Delia, Pablo and Matilde reunited in Mexico City in 1949. She cared for him during a bout of phlebitis, and from then on, they were inseparable. 100 Love Sonnets is a collection of 14-line poems devoted entirely to her, published in late 1959. The book is separated into 4 parts: morning, afternoon, evening, and night. When I first read it, I was a kid, hiding in the poetry section of the now foreclosed Borders bookstore around the corner from my house. A few years later, I found a tiny pink leather-bound copy of 100 Love Sonnets in my stocking at Christmas time. Its replacement has since been worn down with use, dog-eared, underlined, teeming with sticky notes. Initially, I was spellbound by the romantic language of the English translation, and only over time was I able to sophisticate my appreciation for the poet. At first, the cities and geographical landmarks he mentioned meant nothing to me. They were punctuation, alliteration, sprinkles of sweet-sounding glitter. It wasn't until years after I first encountered Pablo that I realized his poems were as much about love for Matilde as they were about love for country. Now, these locations mean everything to me. Chile itself has become a magical, complicated country in which I have invested much research and energy. There's nowhere else in the world I would want to study and explore. Over the next 6 months, I will take 6 trips to some of the places Pablo weaves into his love poetry, engaging with the culture and history behind each poem and place. This project is intensely personal and yet so completely directed towards and through the experiences of this decades past man. I don't know what I'll find or who I'll meet. I know I will be limited by my outsider's perspective and my Spanish proficiency, but I hope that this podcast will reveal the ways in which I develop through and am heartbroken by the expat experience. I've asked some of the people I care about the most in the world to read the very same Neruda poems that inspired me to study in Chile. You'll hear from them more in the episodes to come. Each episode will be centered around a specific Neruda poem, but it will explore far more: how the present intersects with the past, how land and people and cultures have changed or haven't changed. I hope that this show can chart a cultural history of the Neruda legacy and Chilean life and literature, from Gabriela Mistral to Roberto Bolaño to Anna Tijoux. I hope that I'm able to answer the question, is Neruda relevant now? If not, who or what is? For now, though, I'll end this episode with the short opening dedication of 100 Love Sonnets, written by Pablo, of course, for Matilde in October of 1959. My beloved wife, I suffered while I was writing these misnamed sonnets. They hurt me and caused me grief. But the happiness I feel in offering them to you is as vast as a savanna. When I set this task for myself, I knew very well that down the right sides of sonnets, with elegant, discriminating taste, poets of all times have arranged rhymes that sound like silver, or crystal, or cannon fire. But with great humility, I made these sonnets out of wood. I gave them the sound of that opaque, pure substance, and that is how they should reach your ears. Walking in forests, or on beaches, along hidden lakes, in latitudes sprinkled with ashes, you and I have picked up pieces of pure bark, pieces of wood subject to the comings and goings of water and the weather. Out of such softened relics, then, with hatchet and machete and pocket knife, I built up these lumber piles of love. And with 14 boards each, I built little houses so that your eyes, which I adore and sing to, might live in them. Now that I have declared the foundations of my love, I surrender this century to you. Wooden sonnets that rise only because you gave them life. The music here comes from Adrian Berenguer and Gregoire Loom. The translation I'm using of 100 Love Sonnets is courtesy of Stefan Tapscott and the University of Texas Press. Many thanks and love to all those who supported this production and continue to do so. Oh, and really quick, a fun snippet from the end of my conversation with Imantis. And enjoy the rest of your evening. I still have so much of the day left. It's so early.
I'm so jealous. It's 5 p.m. in my country now.
Well, have fun. It's Wednesday night, right?
No, it's not Wednesday, actually. It's Little Friday. We call it Little Fridays.
You do?
Wednesdays are Little Fridays, and, Thursdays are Little Saturdays.
Well, then what's Friday?